Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us and welcome to our weekly media briefing and public health update with Montgomery County Executive Mark Elrich. I'm Lorna Virgili, Hispanic Public Information Officer, and joining us today is Dr. Keisha Davis, who is the county's health officer, Dr. James Bridgers, Director, Department of Health and Human Services, Dr. Earl Stoddard, Assistant Chief Administrative Officer, and our special guest this afternoon is Council Vice President, Mr. Will Jawanda, who is also the chair of the Education and Culture Committee in Montgomery County Council. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. The council member has a hard stop at 1:15, and the county executive has a hard stop at 1:30. So let's get rolling, Mr. County Executive.
I think we can handle this. And thanks everybody for joining us again this week. This morning, I joined Montgomery County Police Chief Mark Yamada at the memorial service for our fallen heroes. This ceremony honors the 21 MCPD officers and one canine officer that were killed in the line of duty over the last century. From Patrolman Joseph Asbury Case, who fell in 1928, to Officer Kyle David Hollinger, who passed in 2019. Every one of these individuals represents a life committed to the safety and well-being of our residents who had to make the ultimate sacrifice. In Montgomery County, we've worked hard to make policing safer for officers and for the public. We ask our officers to be compassionate, to listen, and to diffuse situations rather than escalate tensions. Still, it's a dangerous job. Next week is National Police Week, and I want to thank everyone who works in public safety and their families for bearing such a unique burden. We rely on them to help our community and when they're needed most. I encourage residents and businesses to please show their thanks and appreciation to all of our county's law enforcement professionals. During COVID, these are the people among some of our other critical workers in the county who went out every day and did their jobs, even before we had masks and even before we had good masks. And they didn't have the luxury of doing Zoom meetings and staying at home. They went out and did the jobs they had to do. And that says a lot about the dedication that they bring to their work. This week marks Teacher Appreciation Week, a time to recognize dedicated educators who are underpaid and under-resourced to support student success. I taught for 17 years in a high-needs elementary school, and I know the challenges firsthand. I know why I did it, despite the many challenges. It's amazing to be part of helping students grow and to gain confidence and to gain skills and to help set them on a path for a more successful life. And I'm a huge believer that when we invest in our schools, then we're investing in our students. But the county is struggling. We had, during the recession, a major cutback in school spending because we literally at that time didn't have the money. And because of that, our per pupil spending between 2010 and the present has actually dropped in terms of real dollars. In 2010, adjusted for inflation, we were spending $16,800 per student. Today, we're spending $14,874 per student. And that's with the increase. You can see the period in the blue under my administration where you see the large increases in school funding again. But that has still not gotten us to the point of closing this gap. The gap is meaningful. Over time, the school system has added both special education populations and high poverty numbers. Many of our children are immigrants, don't enter school speaking English, and don't have the background knowledge that many of the kids who've been acculturated here in the United States have when they're taking classes. And all those things make teaching harder. So you can't just say that school results are different now and it must be something wrong with the schools or something wrong with the teachers. It has a lot to do with the preparation that students have before they enter school, the kind of support they had educationally as they were growing up. And those are the things that require us to put more money into this. And I would say also, obviously, in the special needs population, there is a growing number of students with special needs, and they require, usually very small classes and lots of attention. All of that drives up the cost of teaching kids. And so it's just not realistic to think that you can get the same results with less money, but that has been our approach for a while. My recommended tax increase, we proposed increasing the income tax from 3.2% to 3.3%. And for adjusted incomes of $100,000, I'll give you an example. If you make $100,000, that's your adjusted income after you take all the tax credits, the individual deduction or the family deduction, and the deduction for your property taxes and everything else. If you have $100,000 left that's taxable, the impact of this tax on you would be $100 or $2 a week. If you make $200,000, the impact would be $200 a year, $4 a week. That's the impact of this tax. If the council had left my proposal to give an income tax, a ITOC tax credit, which is an income tax offset credit on your property tax bill, $100 would have been $40 and the $200 would have been $140. So this affects about 82% of county residents. This is not the kind of increase that people should be worried about or will actually feel much impact in their pockets. It is, though, critical to the proper functioning of this county. This increase allowed us to fully fund the MCPS request. It allowed us to preserve vital county services. And in case anybody thinks that I wasn't willing to make cuts, I'll point out that I reduced the housing spending by $25 million and the investment in the Green Bank by $5 million. I did not want to do that, but there was no money for that. If I had put the money in there for that, I would have cut major social services in the county. And I had to make a hard choice. And I understand that service delivery to people is the most immediate need. And so we had to work with that. This budget also leaves us with 11% reserves. Our target has been 10%. Under my administrations, we've exceeded that target almost every year, except the first year that I was county executive. And we exceed that target again, but we put more money back in as we were putting the budget together at the end, because we know we're in very uncertain times. So we wanted to have more money available to spend above the 10% reserve level, so we don't trigger the going below the 10% reserves. We've done a good job of managing it so far. We wanted to give ourselves cushion. The increase for MCPS goes to 160 additional special education teachers and 500 full-time special education paraeducators and 52 new security staff for elementary schools, middle schools, and high schools. This is an investment in the health of our county. The council is debating whether they believe the school system can hire the teachers. The school system has told them plainly that they can. They only need 160 new special education teachers. Most of the paraeducators are being converted from part-time to full-time. So I am loath to take a position that we should second-guess the school system's confidence in hiring, knowing that if we don't hire them deliberately, there are going to be children who aren't placed in the right classroom and are not going to get a proper education. I would rather have them fail to be able to hire than to deliberately make it impossible for them to hire. So I hope that people will think about the school budget and think about this increase. Also, I get opposing the 1% increase. Nobody wants to increase taxes, but it was only a week ago they voted for a massive developer giveaway. Letting a person convert an office building to a residential building and giving them a 20-year tax abatement, no taxes for 20 years, at a time when you're thinking about the limitations on the county's resources and what are we going to do with more limited resources. Doing this adds nothing to the county's economy. Housing is generated by demand. We have plenty of supply. We have plenty of planned development in Montgomery County that can go forward when there's demand for it, and it does go forward as demand appears. This doesn't provide any units that otherwise wouldn't be provided. It just provides them in a different place. That means it doesn't provide any additional income. It doesn't matter where that income comes from these conversions or comes from a regular apartment built via the master plan. There's no increase in incomes. is a total loss of property taxes, not just the taxes that they're not paying, but you are likely to have a building or two not built every year for every building that's built with this tax credit. And so we're not going to see the income tax or the property taxes coming from that. And of course, there's no infrastructure support. So this just makes the job of balancing budgets now in the future even harder. On top of that, the council voted while the budget was actually in process, to let developers who have projects delay payment of their impact taxes by a year. That means this year, Montgomery County will not be collecting the impact taxes it should collect, and that's another $5 million hit on the budget. So I appreciate the gnashing of teeth and, wringing of hands over the budget, but one shouldn't be giving away money to people who don't need it when we're struggling to provide services for our residents who do need the services. It's a contradiction of cutting education investment while you give millions away to wealthy developers, and that's not how we do economic development. Virginia won the Amazon bid because of education and workforce training. Maryland missed the mark. Amazon was looking for that. If this had been about money, Maryland would have won the bid for Amazon because we bid more money than Virginia did. But Virginia understood they were looking for talent and not just money. We make strategic investments, and I'm going to talk a little later about AstraZeneca, but we put a lot of money into a deal along with the state to get this $300 million investment in the county in life sciences research. This is the way you're supposed to do economic incentives. You just don't put money out there for someone to grab. You usually negotiate with people and find out what do they need to make a deal work. You actually get to talk about what it needs to make a deal work, and then you decide whether the investment is worth doing. My administration has put a lot of money into incubators and to small companies. We've just have a fund now where there are at least 50 companies that are going to receive between $100,000 and $200,000 as startups. We're trying to grow the economy. We understand that is job number one here that we've got to get done. But we can't grow the economy, and we're not going to grow the economy until we're willing to raise the revenues to invest in the infrastructure it takes to grow. That's what Virginia did. They know exactly what they're doing. And if low taxes were the secret, then the southern states in this country would have emerged as the centers of economic growth rather than the areas with the lowest education levels and poverty. I'm going to thank Will Juando, Council Vice President, for standing up for our students and our educators. And I'm going to turn it over to Will to comment on, what he thinks is going to happen with schools and, what are the issues as he sees them. So, Will, it's yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, County Executive Elrich. Appreciate the opportunity to join today. We're in the middle of our budget sessions right now. And as both the Vice President, but also the Chair of the Education and Culture Committee, I was very pleased that last week the committee recommended full funding for MCPS, including the County Executive's budget amendment to use the modest increase in income taxes to fully fund the school's budget. We supported that level, which would fund the Board of Education request and would also account for a nearly $20 million pension shift that the state put onto us. We have to pay our educators when they retire, and it's a promise we make. And the state is going to make us pay $20 million more than we've ever had to pay because of the shift. So we need to account for that. That also happened with Montgomery College. There was $1 million shift. This is ultimately about equipping our public schools to meet the steepest rise in student need in a generation. Not to mention what we're dealing with coming out of COVID. But even before that, as the county executive mentioned, we still haven't recovered from the per pupil funding and the cuts from the Great Recession. And at the same time, even though we have about 160,000 students, and that has remained relatively flat over the last few years, the numbers of students with needs has dramatically increased. And just to give you context, a 37% increase in emergent multilingual students. These are students who speak English as a second language. That's 3 times the rate of our overall enrollment. And again, all these kids can learn, every child can learn, but they need supports to do so. You have to be able to master the language to get the content, and that requires educators and extra support. Today, we now serve, of our 160,000 students, over 23,000 of them have a disability. And IEP referrals, which is the process by which you get identified with having a disability like autism or ADHD or something of that nature, those have surged 20% in just 2 years. So we're going to have more people adding to those roles. It's good that folks get identified. They are entitled under law, under IDEA, state, federal law, and local law that where they get the services that they're supposed to have. But again, requires resources. And I have a child that is on the autism spectrum in Montgomery County Public Schools. I will tell you firsthand, the teachers that are serving her and others are maxed. There's not enough. They need support. And so much of this education budget is going to help the vast majority of these 600 new positions, 300 of which, plus 360 of which are just conversions from part-time to full-time, are to help support special educators. Another number that I think people don't understand, just this year alone, this school year, 600 newly arrived refugee students have come into our school system. These are students, again, who come in from difficult situations that we have the moral and legal obligation to teach, and it requires resources to do that. And those, nearly half of our students are in poverty. Again, all kids can learn. I was a kid that grew up in Montgomery County schools and was in poverty for some of that time, but you have to give them the resources to do it. There have been some options that, well, these aren't cuts, they're reductions to proposed additions. No, these are necessities. These would be reductions to necessities. This is to get us to the level we heard from Dr. Taylor yesterday as we took up the MCPS budget. This is to get us to the staffing levels that we say we're already doing, to not to exceed or improve, but just to get to the levels that we tell public and parents in the community that we're already doing. These special educators, the English language development teachers, school security officers, all things we hear about from the public who are concerned about their students getting what they need, being safe in school. This is us trying to catch up, the system trying to catch up to documented needs. These are not enhancements. These are not nice to haves, they're must do's. And if we don't fund the budget, which the only way we can do it is by passing this very modest $2 a week, if you make $100,000 a year, as the county executive said, $2 a week to make sure we have 600 more educators, to make sure that we have 52 more security guards, to make sure we have 37 more English language development teachers. I think these are very needed investments. And if we don't have them, we're not going to see the improvement that people want. We've taken big strides in the committee over the last several years as I've chaired it to get deep into the MCPS budget, to understand what they're spending their money on, to have transparency and accountability. But if you want to see scores go up, and they are starting to go up in English, and English scores are starting to go up, reading and writing scores are starting to go up, math is still a struggle, you need to have big gains in the special education population and the emergent multilingual population, as well as our low-income students. And that's where these resources are tied to. And if you can improve and give more resources and capacity to schools to address that, you're going to see scores rise. And that's what we all want, because we want our kids to be prepared to enter the workforce. And so this is not just a moral obligation. It's something that is a good economic development to strategy. As was mentioned, when people look to locate a business or come here, they're looking for a highly educated workforce. We have that, but we need to continue to have that and make sure that future generations are also on track for that. And the other thing I would say is, we can't meet a 21st century school system's challenges. And we're the 14th largest school system in the country, 160,000 students. We transport 100,000 students a day. We feed. We're the largest food delivery system in the county, in that we feed all those kids as well. You can't do it with 20th century resources. And at the time when the federal government is already cutting back food assistance, they're going to pass a bill that cuts Medicaid, which our schools rely on for certain reimbursements. All the things that are being discussed in this horrible reconciliation bill to give tax cuts to the wealthiest Americans. If you make over $1 million, your recent data showed in the bill that they have pending before them, which they're planning to pass by July 4th, in next tax year, you will get a $36,000 tax cut if you're a millionaire. Under this modest increase, you'd only pay $2,000 more if you're a millionaire for a year. Again, it's only $100 if you make $100,000. And the idea that we would not step up when the federal government is stepping back, I think is something that's also really important context that we really haven't had to deal with before. We're in a historic moment where we are going to have a retrenchment in Head Start, in food, in Medicaid. And at that moment in history, we have to step up. We should do it anyway, but especially now. And as the county executive mentioned, make sure we have a healthy reserve going into what's going to be a difficult time for our county. So I've been speaking to residents. I was at the roll and bike to school today at Forest Knolls with a whole bunch of kids and with our Department of Transportation and our police and fire. And parents were literally coming up to me and teachers saying, please, we need the resources. We have a great school, but we're stretched to the max. If we don't make these investments, we're going to see continued teacher burnout and worse retention. You're going to see lawsuits because we literally aren't going to be meeting the needs that were legally required under special education laws. And you're going to see student achievement not going the way we want. You cannot do more with less. You have to do more with more. And this is a very modest proposal that will get us on the path to continued growth and achievement and opportunity for our residents. We always are compared to our folks in the region. County executive mentioned Northern Virginia. Fairfax County, which is a similar size and is also dealing with their budget deficit and trying to fund their schools. They have two taxes that they're proposing, a meals tax and a property tax. And we'll see how that lands. But we're just talking about a very, very modest income tax that if we go forward with the increase in the earned income tax credit that the county executive has proposed, will not hit our lowest earners and will be $2 a day for someone who makes $100,000 adjusted income. As I spoke to someone this morning, they said, I'm willing to do that to make sure that our schools have what they need. And I'm hoping my colleagues will go along with that. So I'll turn it back to you, County Executive.
I've had the same reaction when people say, I don't want any more taxes. I say, look, this is all it is. And they're like shocked because this hype about this is as if we're about to destroy the universe and have massive new taxes. $100, over a year, $2 a week or $4 a week if you're in 200,000 isn't breaking anybody's bank. You already paid your mortgage and everything else, and this is you're only being taxed on what's taxable after that. It's just hard to address the future. And your point about what's coming to us from the feds, it's Head Start. It'll be anything for the environment. If he dries up all the grants, I mean, today's excellent news from him was getting rid of the Energy Star program, which gave tax credits to people who helped them buy more energy efficient appliances. This load is going to be shifted either to us or to nobody. And we've got to ask ourselves, what would it be like to live in a place without Head Start, without taking action to improve the environment? What do you do about shelters? I mean, if under his assumption, the piece of his executive order that accuses us of harboring people, if Montgomery County operates a homeless shelter and an undocumented person is in the shelter, I have committed, me personally, as county executive, have committed the crime of harboring this undocumented person. I've said this before. These guys are wrapping themselves in Christianity, and this is I don't know what he thinks he is, perhaps the Pope, but talking about this new Christian nation, and I'm trying to figure out, where does not feeding the hungry, not healing the sick, and not housing the homeless fit into Christianity? It's not a Christianity I recognize. It's probably not a Christianity that almost anybody recognizes. We have never been like that before.
Yeah.
So having this stuff dumped on us is going to be a challenge.
Agreed.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. Members of the media, we'll take some questions now regarding education before others. Jeannie Bixby with us today. Thank you, Jeannie, for being the first one, reminding everyone that Council Vice President has a 115 hard stop. Teeny.
Thank you, Lorna. Hi, both Will and Mark. You've either of you or both of you can answer this, but you've both talked a lot today about this not necessarily being a huge lift for residents, but something that hasn't been talked about today is that, I've been in a lot of these meetings where these county budget analysts are coming in to talk to the council, and they're saying that this is a very volatile type of tax, and that the predictions and estimations of revenue may really fluctuate. And I guess could you talk about why you're both so sure that this would work, and when there's that concern about the volatility, and also, there's this 75 million number that gets passed around a lot. Like, where are you getting that? Like, is that based on previous year? Like, where are you getting that projection from?
County Executive, you want to start with that, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, it starts with what we assumed incomes are going to be, and we'd already kind of baked in some reductions. So we felt relatively safe with that, but that's also why we increased the reserves. So we could, if we fall short in revenues or if expenses get driven up, we have the ability to buffer that. All setting a lower number would mean guarantee that you have to make the cuts. And one thing we've been trying to avoid is making cuts and then discovering we didn't need to. I'll point out that the last few years, the council left food programs unfunded for half the year, housing programs unfunded for half the year, didn't believe it was going to be needed. And we had to come back mid-year and ask the council for increases. If that budget hadn't had the reserves we put into it, we wouldn't have been able to add that money back in, and people would have been without food and without housing for half a year. So it's no more volatile than anything else. Property taxes are volatile. Trust me, if there are a bunch of single-family homes go on the market because people lost their jobs and are leaving, it will lower the value of a single-family home when there's more new housing on the market than there is demand. There is no magic way of guaranteeing that the numbers are going to be exactly what you want them to be or what you think they're going to be. But the only thing worse than that is just deciding you're not going to raise the money, period. And our number could be, if you don't do the tax increase, what makes 3.2%? That you're guaranteed you're going to get that much money, but you're not going to get that much money if you do 3.3%. That's just nonsense.
Yeah, I think I would just add to that last point. Again, the income tax is always volatile because it depends on mostly our highest earners who again would be the ones who pay most of this tax. The folks who are most able to bear it are the ones that pay most of it, and it's not as that relatively to your income, not that much. But the income tax is always volatile. It goes up and down based on capital gains and a whole bunch of other things. And the finance department has done a good job over the last 5 to 7 years of underestimating what income tax would be. And we've actually gotten more than we thought we would have. Obviously, we're in a different context now. These illegal firings are happening. There certainly will be an impact of that. But a lot of that's going to hit next tax year as well. And so I think, again, you have to make an assumption, but that's why having healthy reserves, if we do have to fill in a hole, we can. Just like any budget, if things happen in the economy and we need to come back and do a savings plan and to reduce, you do that. But you don't start with a cut at the beginning. You meet the needs right now because you're seeing a retrenchment from the federal government. So I think to say that, oh, well, we're not sure on the number, these are always best estimates based on the environment and are updated throughout the year. And that's why you have a healthy reserve. And that's why you have the option of coming back and revisiting the budget like the state legislature might have to do, and that we're here all year long and we might have to do. But I think you want to make sure you make these investments, particularly at a time when you're going to see high need in the community. And remember, these are investments to invest in our community. This is to fund schools, to fund the primary care coalition and health insurance for the uninsured, and food for folks who need it. That's what this money's going to.
Yeah, I'd also add, first of all, if you're so uncertain about revenues, why give away more money to developers when you've got people whose needs are going to be cut? I don't understand the prioritization. I'll also point out, when we did our COVID budget, that was a lot of fun. The council staff came in and said we were going to dig a $500 million hole, and there were going to be layoffs and all kinds of terrible things were going to happen. No such thing happened. They've been overly inconsistently overly conservative about things. And frankly, it's a strategy to say you're not going to have money, which keeps you from being able to do things you need to do, like not funding a full year of food, knowing that you're going to need a full year of food, and then having to go back into reserves and pull it out when you finally need it. It's like, I think, Will, you said it really well. If I have to do horrible things like shed jobs, we're going to do it. We don't have a choice. But in this moment, we have a choice. And if we keep the reserves higher, there's less likelihood we're going to have to go deeper into this, deeper into our reserves. And we think we can do it. We actually built reserves during COVID rather than bled reserves. So I'm not happy about what's facing us, but I think we can manage it and we'll make the tough decisions. I'm not going to pretend that I can't manage something if I don't have the money to manage it, and some things will have to change. But
Yeah,
I'll do it on an as-needed basis.
I appreciate that. But my question was also like, where are these projections coming from? Like, are these based on a specific point in time? Because obviously we're looking at, economic experts are predicting a recession with everything at the federal level. Like, where are we getting these projections?
The original projections of what the counties and the state were going to get, all of this came out of the state originally.
Mm-hmm.
So as they make modifications and as we see changes in what we're getting, we will make changes. But nobody knows what that number is going to be. So you shoot in the dark and you cut stuff, and then you wind up cutting stuff you didn't need to cut. That would be worse than cutting it when you need to cut it.
Right. And Jenny, I know you were there for part of the session the other day when finance said, we have the income taxes distributed by the state, at different intervals. The next big one is at the end of May. That'll give them a way to know. But the incomes, we get 60% of our income tax from withholdings, right, from people who have jobs. So we'll start to see if that goes down. You'll be able to monitor that. But I think you have to make an estimate, and those estimates that they've made throughout the recession and through now have been pretty good. And so I think you could talk more to the finance department or look back at that session about how they make those assumptions, but it is a valid way to make those assumptions.
Another way to look at it is that on property taxes people are paying in July of this year are based on their property values, which we know have gone up. Income taxes that people are going to pay now are based on their income as of 12/31/2024. So what's baked into this year are probably pretty good income tax numbers and property tax numbers. The question is going to be when you get to the 12/31/25 filing, the end of this fiscal year, you will see a decline in incomes, and you're going to have to make adjustments for whatever property taxes those incomes throw off. So, we realize it's less of a threat because so much of this is based on taxes that people are already getting bills for, like the property tax and the income tax, which is based on last year's income. So next year will be more volatile. That I expect.
I know Suzanne's in the queue, so you've both mentioned COVID a lot, but the COVID landscape I know is very different because you were getting money from the federal government. The federal government is kind of the reason we're in the mess we're in now. So does that at all change your planning, knowing that you're not going to have that for reserves?
Well, that's why you have to do this small increase to keep the reserves high. I mean, that's what we're talking. That's part of it too. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, I mean, it was very different with COVID. You started with a good year of tax revenue behind you, walking into what was going to be a lesser year for both private sector and for individuals. But we managed it, and we didn't get totally bailed out by the feds on everything. One thing we tried very carefully to do, we didn't exit COVID with a bunch of programs run on federal money, COVID money. We were very careful not to do that. Partly that's why we built reserves of 17% one year and 15% the other year. We've been anything but tax and spend. When we go over our budget, we do not find new projects to do. We try to make sure we conserve the money to help us build if we need to fill a gap in the following year. We're using money that we saved this year in excess of 10%. that enables us to go down to 11% and not have to cut things to get there. I think, we'll manage it the way we have to manage it. But nobody knows the right number. The council couldn't tell me, and their economic people couldn't tell me what the right tax revenue is going to be next year. Good luck with that.
And I apologize. I have to go back down to council session. Suzanne, if it was for me, you can call me. But thank you for having me, County Executive. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you to Council Vice President Joanda for joining us. He did have to run. Suzanne, do you have a question for the County Executive regarding this topic?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Either one or whoever answered it. I just want to make sure I understand. When you say fully fund the teacher's budget, does that mean every single thing they've asked for?
They didn't
every single department?
First place, we can't do department by department appropriations. That is not our ability. We get a school budget and it's for a gross number of dollars and we can't order them. I was on the council when we had this dilemma years ago. The school system gets the money and they pretty much put it where they want to. Occasionally, the council can make a decision, but we do not run an education department over here, nor does the council. So the ability of us to examine department budgets or activities within the school system is very different for us. We don't have, and no jurisdictions, unless the school system's integrated into the county government, no jurisdictions have the oversight over the schools that the school board has over here. So we're in a very different situation with that.
So when council or you say we're going to take X number of dollars off, like Department of Rec or something like that, that's just you saying you decide how to do it, but you're not getting this much money?
More or less.
Okay.
So what we're, if they take something off, I'm pretty sure what they're going to target is they're going to tell them to hire fewer teachers. That's the biggest number and the most obvious thing. But again, I can tell you from my council experience, there was a year when we told the school board, we're giving you this much money and you have to do X, Y, and Z. They didn't do it. They put the money where they wanted to. They went out and scared parents about cuts to paraeducator salaries and time. And then they took the money and they put it someplace else and they still cut paraeducators hours. So, school system is not fully under control of the county government. It's not under control of any county government in the state.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Suzanne Pollack, Montgomery County Community Media. County Executive, other topics?
Other topics. So I was following up on the idea of making investments in infrastructure. One of the best examples of how we can make this kind of investment is to create a modern bus rapid transit system that meets the needs of our residents today, and it positions us for the future. And when I first proposed BRT back in 2008, it was because I knew we couldn't keep growing as a county without rethinking how people move. I was very interested in this topic. I was serving on COG. The projections for congestion in the DC region were astronomical. And at COG, there was kind of a moment of cognizance that we were planning a future in which nobody was going to be able to go anywhere. And we just were merrily going along saying, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. Nobody had ever assessed the cost of infrastructure. Nobody had assessed, what it would take to deal with it. And what they did tell us is that the level of service, the functionality of our roads was going to seriously decline in this period. And so a lot of us on COG started looking for, so how do we rein things in? I was in a meeting and I was looking at the climate data that they had, and somebody said, they told us that most of the greenhouse gases were behaving themselves, sort of, but CO2 was going to go through the ceiling. And we started talking about transit, and one of former Montgomery County council members said, everybody's not going to ride transit. And my response was, everybody doesn't have to ride transit. Let's figure out what percentage of people do we need to shift out of vehicles in order to attain climate goals. That's actually a knowable thing. And I assure you, it's not everybody. If we had to get everybody on transit in order to make things work, we would not be doing that because everybody's not going to do it, not going to follow through. But we did know, and people were talking it back then, and they've been talking about it ever since, that transit is the region's #1 impediment to economic growth. And the reason that I proposed the BRT system was to get us out of the transit bubble so that the inadequacy of our road system didn't lead to the inability to build. And the BRT system was a way of connecting people from where they lived to where they worked, get enough traffic off the road, or at least accommodate future growth so that we didn't get stymied from being able to grow. And the council eventually passed it, and Clark and Planning adopted the maps. The maps you see are actually maps that were drawn up in my office with Dale Tibbetts when I was on the council, and the system we laid out turned out to be borne out by the other people who did the research on it. So we feel pretty good about that, but we haven't built a single inch of true BRT in this county ever since then, because no councils had the will to raise the money to do it. The state doesn't have the money and never had the money to give us as much money as we needed. And after the ICC and the Purple Line, people were a little bit tired of Montgomery County getting these major capital projects, which don't always appear in other parts of the state. So we weren't getting state support. And so we've struggled to build anything. We have a line on New Hampshire Avenue, the Flash, and it is partly out of the roadway, but for the major part of it runs in the roadway. Our plans are to correct that and get dedicated lanes, but you really need to provide as much dedicated lanes as possible. The county council never wrapped its head around how do we build this, and despite constantly trying to point out to them what Virginia did, how they did it, why they did it, it sounds like everything you would ask in Montgomery County and everything you would try to respond to in Montgomery County, except their response was to raise taxes on commercial property, with commercial property actually agreeing to this. And they were able to go forward and start building transit. And now they're ready to do a big bus rapid transit system on top of the lines they already have. So they set themselves up to create a revenue source that they could grow with. And Montgomery County's strategy was, we'll just lower the taxes on developers. So we have probably more than, I'd say 12 years or longer history of lowering taxes on developers, and at the same time losing to Fairfax for the actual jobs. So are you competing to have the lowest tax rate, or are you competing to have the most jobs? If you're competing to have the most jobs, Fairfax County wins. If you're competing to have a lower fair tax on developers, then Fairfax County, Montgomery County wins. I would take the jobs over winning this race to have the lowest tax rate. And every time they reduce taxes, to say we need doing this to remain competitive. So just in a simple explanation, if you build in Montgomery County, you're paying the county $1 for property tax, whether you're residential and commercial. If you're building in Fairfax and Tyson's Corner, you're paying $1.54 for commercial property. If you're building in DC for commercial property, you're paying between $1.66 and $1.89 on commercial property taxes. Montgomery County is $1.04. So we've definitely won the race to the bottom. And I'm like, I think it's time we actually try to win the race to the top, and we raise the funds we need, we build the infrastructure we need. It will support business growth, and the beauty of the tax structure we're looking at is every new building lowers somebody else's taxes, because all you're paying for is the bonds that finance a transportation project. It's not like you set this tax rate and the tax rate is a permanent tax rate. Every time a new building gets built and contributes to the tax base, your share of the taxes goes down. So I'm going to continue to harp on Virginia because obviously they're successful. They're not in a foreign territory. They are across the river from us. They're an observable example, and you can see what they're doing, and you can see how they're getting their money. There's no magic to it. You can read their budget book. I read their budget book. No smoke and mirrors. It's like commercial property pays more. It works. Commercial property benefits. That's why they're willing to pay more. Not rocket science. On the brighter side, last Friday we celebrated the 50th anniversary of the ride-on bus system, and it come a long way from the converted bread trucks that were the original ride-on buses. Today, we're the second largest local transit system in the region. The only one larger than us is WMATA. Almost all the other local bus systems, if you added them all together, would be smaller than Montgomery County. I think only one would there's one system that's a little bit larger and would put us smaller than the collection of all the other transit systems in the region, except WMATA. So that's how big we are, pretty substantial, 16 million riders. I'm pleased to highlight another step forward now, the expansion of our ride-on flash bus on 29 into Howard County. So we've signed a new agreement to extend flash service from Silver Spring to downtown Columbia. People have long complained about how heavy traffic was on 29, and we know that a lot of that comes down from Howard County. We've known that for a long time. This is the first major step to address that by providing a regular transit alternative and having Howard County part of this deal with 4 stops in it, starting in Columbia and coming down to Burtonsville, is going to help Howard County residents get to their jobs in Silver Spring, Bethesda, or DC, or wherever, help them get to those jobs without driving. And that's really important. So it's exciting first step. Howard County has other ideas for how they want to expand their bus rapid transit. And it's just nice to have this partnership. It's a big deal because it also connects riders to Metro Mark and even the Purple Line when that finishes. It also ties together 2 of Maryland's major job centers, 4 new stations. One of them is going to be at Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Lab. That's how many employees they have there, that it's worth their while to have a station there for their employees. And they're very excited about having a bus stop there because their employees have to endure some of these terrible commutes. The other good news is this is increasingly becoming doable. The cooperation sets a new tone for the work we're doing. It's good to be able to go to state with a bi-county project, not just Montgomery County on its own. We're moving slower than we should because we have not cracked the financing number. The need is urgent. We're planning 8 BRT corridors with more than 100 stops across the county. And the sooner we build them, the sooner we can get people to their jobs, to the schools and hospitals more easily and more affordably. We create capacity to allow us to have more development rather than for people to see us as a place where it's impossible to drive in. Through the Ride On Reimagine study, we heard very clearly from residents they want buses to run more often, even if that means walking a little farther to the stop. And flash service and BRT service lets you do that. Our riders and our workers make this system what it is. Ride On grew faster than almost any other transit system in the country last year, and that's a credit to the people behind the wheel, every one of whom is a union worker committed to public service. Their work is changing lives. Transit is not a luxury. It's the foundation of a more equitable and sustainable future. If we're serious about economic development, we have to be more sustainable and we have to reduce carbon emissions and we have to be serious about our transit infrastructure. One of the really cool things, we're moving toward battery buses, but we're also moving toward hydrogen buses. And Montgomery County is going to be a generator of hydrogen at 2 facilities in Montgomery County that are going to help us fuel the hydrogen buses. So that's something to be excited about. We're truly on the cutting edge of things with that. Other happy news. On Monday, I joined AstraZeneca to mark the opening of a new $300 million advanced manufacturing facility in Rockville. This facility is going to produce their CAR T cell therapies, cutting edge treatments that are transforming how we fight cancer. And these are therapies that can literally save lives. And we're now working to make this happen right here in Montgomery County. They're not the only people in the CAR T space, but this is a huge step forward. Having a manufacturing facility is a big deal because now you've gone beyond research to actual product. And what's interesting about it is the way it works is they're not producing a medicine. You're not going to get a medicine out of this factory that goes out to a patient. What they do is, wherever you are in the country, you go to a clinic, and if you've got a cancer that they have the ability to treat, and the list will grow, they harvest some of your blood. Blood gets frozen and sent to AstraZeneca here. AstraZeneca then thaws it out, and it extracts the T cells, which are the cells in your body that fight germs, fight cancer, fight things, foreign bodies that are alien to you that you need to get rid of. And they take the T cells out and they modify the T cells, put them back, and then send them back to the patient with modified T cells. And so you don't risk rejection. But the big thing you get out of this is you get tailored antibodies for the person who provided the samples, and which is exciting. We're moving into an era of personal medicine, and this is how personal it's going to be. Your bag of blood converted to a cancer-fighting drug and put back in your body. And the cancer-fighting agent is a cell that your body normally produces. Very cool. I get excited about this stuff. It's a little bit geeky, but I hope you can appreciate just how amazing things are right now, despite all the craziness around us. There are amazing good things happening. These are when we supported AstraZeneca's expansion, we had $100,000 and we leveraged $500,000 from the state to make this happen. We make targeted investments that make sense. We support a project that's going to create more than 150 high-quality, high-paying jobs, and it builds on our effort to ensure our county remains one of the large bioscience, life science clusters in the country. We're number 3 now. We aim to grow. And that's a better use of taxpayer dollars than giving that money to a developer for tax abatements they don't need. After they announced their plans for this facility just over a year ago, AstraZeneca worked closely with our planning and permitting services and county staff to move this project forward quickly. And I appreciate the work of DPS to support this project. It's aggressive timeline, which means they'll be able to manufacture life-saving treatments for patients very soon. And that speaks to the changes we've made in the Department of Permitting Services. They are much more agile, much more of a partner with the developer than an antagonist to a developer. And they are able to make progress. And when we prioritize this project, because of the urgency of it, they did a great job getting it done. This is good news. It's just one part of a larger story. We've seen significant expansions recently from United Therapeutics in Silver Spring, Millerport Sigma in Rockville, and the new University of Maryland Health Computing Institute for Health Computing in North Bethesda. And they've already got a link with AstraZeneca, and they're applying AI to one of AstraZeneca's research areas. So that partnership is already beginning to pay off. Montgomery County is a global leader in life sciences because we've worked to attract and retain the right partners. We're going to keep doing that, whether it's large corporations or entrepreneurs. And we're working with homegrown companies, or those we can attract, not just from here, but from around the nation and the world. And the Koreans have a person here, and their goal is to set up, and I've mentioned this before, a launching pad for Korean businesses in the United States. So we're trying to grow our opportunities and diversify the area we work in. Next month, I'm going to be attending the annual bio conference that's taking place in Boston. I look forward to sharing these successes while meeting with other potential bio and life science companies to convince them of the opportunities to relocate or expand here in Montgomery County. The good news about Montgomery County competitively is rents are lower here than they are in San Francisco and Boston, and commercial property goes for less here than in San Francisco and Boston. So we're well positioned to attract these kind of businesses. I hope NIH at some point returns to its former self. That would be critical, but the hits on NIH are going to affect every life science center in the country. So we'll make do with what we can do, and we'll try to build a stronger platform going forward. But I'm excited about where we sit, and life sciences have been very good to us. May is a month of recognitions, apparently. So you got that honor. May is recognition month. So I'm going to go through the various things we're recognizing. I'm going to start with Small Business Week. Well, we had some big economic wins lately, like AstraZeneca. Most businesses in Montgomery County are small. They're storefronts, restaurants, contractors, and entrepreneurs who make our neighborhoods vibrant. Tomorrow, I'm going to be visiting a few businesses in Silver Spring and Burtonsville, hear directly from the owners what's working and where we can do better. Many have gotten support from our Small Business Center, our regional service centers, or our permitting staff. And the new programs like the Founders Fund and Technology Innovation Fund are helping small businesses grow. This week is also Public Service Recognition Week, and I've spent most of my life in public service. I've never seen the kind of attacks we've seen now in our federal workforce. People who make America work, people who make sure that the programs that we all depend on, whether it's your taxes being collected, whether it's your Social Security checks going out, whether it's funding for Head Start or things that are important to our communities. Behind all that is our federal workforce, and people losing their jobs at NIH and HHS aren't the political operatives. They're the scientists, researchers, and professionals who are doing important work for the country. They deserve support, not the scapegoating that they're getting. And here in Montgomery County, I want to thank every county employee who continues to show up for this community, no matter the department or the role they play. Our public employees make this tick. And without them, and if we didn't have a dedicated staff of people who care about their jobs, we would not be where we are today. So I want to thank everybody. Another group being recognized this month is it's Nurses Week. And our county nurses aren't only in the hospitals, they work in our schools, our clinics, and our public health programs. Their work is essential to keep residents healthy, especially those who don't always have access to traditional care. We're a healthier county because of their efforts. And again, the nurses were among those groups of workers who went to their jobs, put themselves at risk. They actually had to get close to people with COVID. As many of us went to work and tried to avoid people with COVID, they had no choice but to work with people with COVID. And they went to work and they did their jobs, and we have a lot to thank them for. And I think hopefully all of us will always remember what they did at that time. May is also Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. And over the weekend, I joined our 4th annual County AAPI celebration hosted by the Asian American Health Initiative, and it brought together dozens of community organizations to share resources and celebrate the rich diversity of the cultures within the AAPI community. And as we reflect on the contributions, we also have to acknowledge the real concerns that still exist, especially about hate and bias. With Trump back in office and his xenophobic behavior, this is not lost on the Chinese community. Many of them wonder, are they going to be safe here with the president acting as he is? And his messages on tariffs and trade war with very anti-Chinese, anti-Vietnamese, anti-Asian language, these communities hear it, and they feel it, and they're concerned about once again being scapegoated by this deplorable individual. Last December, we launched a streamlined way to report hate and bias incidents online. It's one of our broader efforts to ensure everyone in Montgomery County feels safe, and that includes all the diverse religions and ethnicities within our Asian Pacific Islander communities. May also brings Older Americans Month and Building Safety Month, which highlights the roles that county government plays in people's lives. As an older American myself, much as I hate to admit it, I'm glad that we recognize Older Americans Month in Montgomery County. Aging with dignity is a priority of this county government, and why we have been recognized as an AARP age-friendly community. We're only one of 6 jurisdictions in the state, and by far the largest to earn that designation. And that's because we take this aging seriously, from transportation to housing to nutrition to social connection. And finally, it's also Building Safety Month, and it's time to recognize the important work of our Department of Permitting Services and the work they do every day. They are offering free deck inspections and sharing tips that help homeowners avoid hazards and prepare for emergencies. Safety isn't just about emergency response, it's about prevention. Whether it's our small business owners, our AAPI communities, our public servants, our nurses, our older adults, or the people keeping buildings safe, May gives us a chance to thank all of you. So I'm going to stop now and turn it over to my health team.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. County Executive. I think you covered all of the health updates, so I don't have anything additional to add. I do want to just highlight and give additional kudos to our nurses. This is Nurse Appreciation Month. Monday is Nurse Appreciation Day, and there is so much that nurses do, from school health to community health nursing to tuberculosis to wound care, you name it. We are just so appreciative of the work that our nurses are doing, and also recognition of Mental Health Awareness Month. And any time is a good time to remove that stigma and barriers that are related to mental health. So nothing additional for me. I will turn it over to Dr. Bridgers.
Nothing additional from me, Dr. Davis. You've covered it all on the health and human services side, so thank you. Dr. Stoddard.
I actually have no additional comments today either, so we can go ahead and go to questions.
All righty, thank you, everybody. Members of the media, do you have any questions, additional questions for the county executive and or the rest of the county officials? Please raise your hands. No additional questions? Going once? Twice? All right, I guess we're done for today. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Stay safe, have a great afternoon, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.